Now begins the recitation of the revelation word of the Divine Avataric Master, Paramasapta Na, Adida Samraj. This is the Immortal Love-Bliss from the Dawn Horse Testament. The apparently individual or separate self is not self-existing. The apparently individual or separate self is not immortal. The apparently individual or separate self is not a spark or an eternal fraction of self-radiant divinity and somehow complete or whole in itself. Only real acoursal God, the intrinsically egoless divine acoursal person, is self-existing, immortal, eternal, non-separate, indivisible, complete, whole, and self-radiant. The apparently individual or separate self is not inwardly or in and of itself perfect, a soul or a perfect individual consciousness, and somehow full of divine qualities such as inherent happiness, unconditional love, infinite bliss, and boundless energy. Only real acoursal God, the intrinsically egoless divine acoursal person, is perfect consciousness, non-separate, indivisible, full of, or characterized by the qualities of inherent happiness, unconditional love, infinite bliss, and boundless energy. The truth that sets the heart free is not that the apparently individual or separate self or ego I is itself immortal and divine, or that some fraction or dimension of the apparently individual or separate self is immortal and divine, but the truth that sets the heart free is that there is only real acoursal God, the real, the truth, or that which is always already the case. The apparently individual or separate self arises conditionally, and yet it always already inheres in real acoursal God. The apparently individual or separate self in the total complex conditional body-mind or apparent psychophysical personality. The total complex apparently individual or separate self is arising in three primary and coincident forms: the gross or the physical, the subtle or the etheric, the mind of thoughts, and the observing discriminating intelligence, and the casual or the root essence of the conditional self or ego I, which is separate and separative attention itself. The total complex apparently individual or separate self is arising as an apparent modification and contraction of the eternal self-radiance or inherent spirit brightness of real acoursal God, and as an apparent contraction of the transcendental or self-existing consciousness that is real acoursal God. The individual or separate self, as well as every other apparent being and every other apparent form or process manifested within the cosmic domain, cosmic mandala, arises conditionally, but nevertheless always already inhering in real acoursal God. Because of this, no individual being or apparent form is ever finally destroyed or ended in this drama of worlds. Every apparent or conditional one and every apparent or conditional thing is a process, a continuum of changes that persists even through and beyond dissolution or death, because separation from the transcendental or eternal and inherently spiritual and intrinsically egoless and self-evidently divine nature, condition and state that is real causal God is not possible. However, mere continuation is not happiness itself, or the inherent realization of love-bliss. Merely to persist as an apparently separate form or process, unconsciously inhering in the eternal, real causal God, is only to meditate on limitation. The self-limited personality, confined to the apparent display of causes and effects, is stress-bound to seek fulfillment and release, either by exclusive involvement in the illusions of inwardness, as if the conditional self, dissociated from body and mind, were itself the immortal love-bliss, or by extroverted and apparently inclusive indulgence of body and mind in the illusions of conditional experience and conditional knowledge, as if the mandala of the conditionally manifested cosmos were itself the immortal love-bliss. The immortal and self-evidently divine love-bliss is realized neither by exclusive identification with the inward self-position, nor by apparently inclusive immersion in the conditional or phenomenal realms. To realize the self-evidently divine self-nature, self-condition, source condition and self-state, that is love-bliss, is necessarily a matter of transcending the entirely self-imposed or self-presumed limits on love-bliss itself, to the degree, most ultimately, of inherent and inherently most perfect, and intrinsically and inherently most perfectly egoless self-identification with love-bliss itself. Therefore, the only by me revealed and given radical reality way of the heart, or radical reality way of Adidam, or Adidam Rishiradam, is never a matter of identification with the subjective or the objective limitations of the conditional self-position or ego I. In the right, true, full and fully devotional practice of the only by me revealed and given radical reality way of the heart, or radical reality way of Adidam, both the subjective and the objective illusions created by the self-contraction are transcended, and this through the process of real and most fundamental self-understanding, which, by means of my avatarically self-transmitted divine transcendental spiritual grace, becomes ecstasy, or the real transcending of the ego I, in real causal God, or ego transcending communion with the one in whom the conditional self and the conditional worlds are arising, or appearing to arise, as apparent modifications of itself, and which, most ultimately, by means of my avatarically self-transmitted divine transcendental spiritual grace, realizes divine ecstasy or awakening to inherent and inherently most perfect self-identification with my self-evidently divine and perfectly subjective self-nature, self-condition and self-state, in which every conditional or phenomenal appearance, including my body-mind self, always already inheres. Da. This is the immortal love-bliss from the Dawn-Horse Testament. Here ends the recitation of the revelation word of the Divine Avataric Master, Paramal Saptana Adidar Samraj.